The galaxy trembled when Palpatine returned from the shadows. His dark essence transferred to a cloned body that defied natural death. The resurrected Emperor moved his pieces on the galactic board with the same calculating mastery as before, and his primary target was Luke Skywalker, the last of the Jedi. Through coded messages and visions through the Force, Palpatine whispered promises of power and knowledge, trying to corrupt the young master. Luke, now 30 years old and carrying the weight of being the guardian of light in the galaxy, faced the most anguishing dilemma of his life. He knew that confronting Palpatine directly would be useless. The Sith would always find a way to escape, transferring his consciousness to another clone. The only way to destroy the Emperor would be from within, infiltrating his inner circle and discovering the secret of his artificial immortality. After consulting with the ghosts of Obi-Wan and Yoda, Luke made the most dangerous decision of his life, to temporarily surrender to the dark side. He accepted Palpatine's invitation and became his apprentice, pretending to succumb to the promises of supreme power. The young master began to learn the darkest secrets of the Sith, diving into forbidden knowledge that would make any Jedi recoil in horror. Each day at Palpatine's side tested the limits of his willpower and his connection to the light side. Luke knew he was walking on the edge of an abyss, where a single misstep would mean his definitive fall to the darkness. But he had faith in the Force and in the prophecy that would one day bring balance to the galaxy, even if that balance required terrible sacrifices. Decades in the past, in Coruscant, Anakin Skywalker woke up startled in the middle of the night, his heart racing and his breathing irregular. The nightmares about Padme had returned with renewed force, visions of her suffering and dying that left him paralyzed with fear. In the morning, he sought Master Yoda in his private quarters. The small Jedi Master immediately noticed the disturbance in his spirit. Yoda listened attentively while Anakin described his prophetic dreams, the anguish evident in every word. The old master shook his head slowly, his ancient eyes reflecting centuries of wisdom and understanding. Yoda suggested that Anakin seek answers not in worries about the future, but in the deep connection with the Force in the present. Following the master's advice, Anakin headed to the temple's meditation chamber, a sacred place where generations of Jedi had sought enlightenment. Anakin knelt in the center of the circular chamber, closed his eyes and let his mind plunge into the invisible currents of the Force. He sought peace, clarity, an answer to the fear that consumed his heart when he thought about losing Padme. Hours passed as he deepened in his meditative trance, feeling the Force flow through him like a river of pure energy. Then, something extraordinary happened. The Force not only touched him, but completely seized him, pulling his consciousness through time and space. When Anakin opened his eyes again, he was no longer in the Jedi Temple of Coruscant. He found himself in a devastated world, where ancient ruins rose against an orange and dusty sky. The air was heavy with residual radiation and the smell of ancient destruction. This was Osus, a dark testament to the wars between Jedi and Sith. Anakin stood up slowly, observing the desolate panorama around him. Broken monuments and collapsed structures spread as far as the eye could see, each stone carrying echoes of long-forgotten battles. He took a few uncertain steps, trying to understand how he had gotten there and what the Force wanted him to see. It was then that he noticed a figure in the distance, dressed entirely in black, walking among the ruins with defined purpose. The presence in the Force was powerful, marked by both light and shadows that danced in his aura. Anakin felt a strange connection with that being, something familiar but impossible to identify. He began to walk toward the mysterious figure, his hand instinctively resting on the lightsaber attached to his belt. As he approached, he could distinguish the details better. It was a Jedi without doubt, but different from any other he had ever known. Luke Skywalker was examining the ruins of an ancient training hall when he felt the sudden disturbance in the Force. He turned quickly, his hand already reaching for his lightsaber, when he saw a figure that made his heart practically stop. There, in the middle of the ruins of Osus, stood Anakin Skywalker, but not the Darth Vader he had known, but the young Jedi Knight of whom he had heard so much. Luke was paralyzed for a moment, looking at that face without scars, those eyes still shining with uncorrupted hope and determination. Anakin broke the silence first, his voice laden with confusion and caution. "Who are you and where am I?" he asked, his blue eyes examining Luke with intensity. Luke fought against the impulse to embrace his father, to tell the whole truth at that moment, but something told him it wasn't time. "My name is Master Luke. You are Anakin Skywalker. I know. You are in a moment decades ahead of your future," he responded calmly, observing the shock spread across the young knight's face. Anakin shook his head in denial, taking a step back as if Luke's words were a physical blow. "This is impossible. I was meditating in the Jedi Temple," he protested, his voice mixing disbelief and a touch of panic. Luke maintained a serene expression, although inside he struggled with the emotion of being face to face with his father before the fall. "The Force brought you here, Anakin. It has its own purposes that we don't always understand immediately," Luke explained, gesturing to the ruins around them. The two remained in silence for a moment, the weight of the impossible situation pressing on both. Luke knew that this meeting was not accidental. The Force rarely did anything without reason. He began to understand that perhaps he was facing an opportunity to alter the course of history, to save his father before it was too late. As he watched Anakin process the information, Luke made a decision that would change the destiny of the entire galaxy. "Come, we need to talk, and there is much you need to know," Luke said, beginning to walk among the ruins. Anakin hesitated only a moment before following the mysterious Jedi in black. As they walked, Luke began to tell a story that sounded like a nightmare. He spoke about the rise of the Galactic Empire, about how the Republic fell and was replaced by tyranny. He mentioned a Dark Lord called Darth Vader, without revealing his true identity, describing him as the Emperor's right hand. Anakin listened in growing silence, but when Luke mentioned that Palpatine had become Emperor, he stopped abruptly. "Palpatine can't be. He is the Supreme Chancellor. He fights for the Republic," Anakin exclaimed, the denial evident in his voice. Luke turned to face him directly, his eyes carrying the weight of painful truths. "Palpatine is Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who orchestrated the entire war to gain absolute power," Luke revealed with a firm voice. The revelation hit Anakin like lightning, making all the pieces begin to fit together in his mind. Luke continued, explaining how Vader had eventually killed Palpatine, but the Sith found a way to cheat death through clones. "Now he has returned, and to defeat him once and for all, I became his apprentice," Luke confessed, observing Anakin's horrified expression. "You joined the dark side?" Anakin questioned, his hand again going to the saber. Luke shook his head calmly. "Sometimes, to destroy the darkness, we need to walk through it without losing ourselves. It's the only way to learn its secrets and find its weakness." Anakin processed those words, remembering his own nightmares and fears. "Perhaps the Force brought you here so you can learn about Palpatine before it's too late," Luke suggested carefully. "And perhaps so you can learn to control the dark side without being consumed by it." Luke gestured for them to continue walking, leading Anakin deeper into the ruins of Osus. As they walked, he began to share his own story, speaking about how he had been the last apprentice trained by Yoda, although he omitted the details about how this happened after the fall of the Order. He mentioned his sister Leia, a powerful Jedi and brilliant leader who fought alongside the New Republic. Anakin listened fascinated as Luke described his plans to rebuild the Jedi Order right there in Osus, to transform those ruins into a new beginning. "There is so much lost knowledge here, so many lessons from ancient wars that we can learn not to repeat the same mistakes," Luke explained with evident passion. He spoke about how he intended to train a new generation of Jedi, more balanced and less dogmatic than the old order. Anakin found himself admiring the vision of that young master, his determination to rebuild something that hadn't even fallen yet in Anakin's time. "I am willing to teach what I learned from Palpatine," Luke offered, stopping and turning to Anakin. "Knowledge about the dark side is not inherently evil. It is how we use that knowledge that defines our path." Anakin felt confused, divided between his traditional Jedi training and the logic in Luke's words. The Order always taught that the dark side should be completely avoided, that even studying it was dangerous. But Luke was proposing something different, a deeper understanding that could provide the tools to combat threats like Palpatine. Before Anakin could respond, Luke looked at something behind him and a genuine smile formed on his face. When Anakin turned to see what had captured Luke's attention, his heart almost stopped. There, emerging from behind a broken column, was a figure he hadn't seen in a long time. His former Padawan, Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka ran toward Anakin, tears already streaming down her face before she even reached him. She hugged him tightly, sobbing against his chest as he held her, completely stunned. "Master, it's really you," she murmured between tears. "I felt your presence. I had to see with my own eyes." Luke watched the scene with a mixture of emotion and satisfaction, knowing that Ahsoka's presence would help convince Anakin of the truth. When Ahsoka finally pulled away, she looked at Anakin with eyes that had seen too many horrors. Luke explained the situation to her in a few words, and Ahsoka confirmed everything he had said about Palpatine, about the Empire, about Order 66 that almost killed her. Anakin listened in heavy silence, seeing the pain in his former apprentice's eyes. Luke intervened gently, explaining that Anakin's presence there was temporary, that he had a short mission and needed to learn some crucial things. Ahsoka understood immediately, her sharp intelligence catching what wasn't said. She said goodbye to Anakin with another tight hug, whispering in his ear that he should trust the Force and the Jedi Order, but also his own wisdom and heart. After Ahsoka left, Luke took Anakin to a more isolated area of the ruins, where ancient training chambers still maintained their basic structures intact. There, far from curious eyes and external disturbances, Luke began the most dangerous teachings a Jedi could receive. He explained that the dark side was not just about blind anger and hatred, but about understanding and channeling powerful emotions without being consumed by them. Anakin listened with intense attention, each word resonating with something deep inside him, something that the traditional order always told him to suppress. Luke demonstrated control techniques, showing how to access the power of the dark side while maintaining the essence of his humanity intact. For days that seemed suspended in time, the two Jedi danced on the thin line between light and darkness. Luke deliberately provoked Anakin, forcing him to confront his anger, his fear, his frustration with the Jedi Order and its restrictive rules. The first exercises were mental and emotional, Luke guiding Anakin through meditations that explored his deepest fears. He taught the young knight to recognize these emotions without denying them or being dominated by them. Anakin struggled initially, his Jedi training resisting every step of this unorthodox journey. But gradually, he began to understand what Luke was showing, that completely suppressing emotions only made them more powerful when they finally emerged. Instead, recognizing them, understanding them, and consciously directing them offered true control. Luke shared insights about how Palpatine manipulated people through their emotions, exploiting hidden fears and desires. He showed Anakin the patterns of manipulation, the whispered words, the seductive promises that the dark side offered. Armed with this knowledge, Anakin would begin to recognize these tactics when Palpatine eventually used them against him. Then came the practical exercises, beginning with lightsaber combat where Luke attacked not only physically, but with words designed to awaken Anakin's anger. He mentioned Padme, the Jedi Order, Anakin's frustrations with the Council, each verbal blow as calculated as the movements of his saber. Anakin felt the fury growing inside him, a red wave that threatened to drown him completely. But following Luke's instructions, he didn't try to suppress the feeling. Instead, he acknowledged it, let it flow through him without becoming it. His movements became faster, more precise, fueled by emotion but not controlled by it. Luke smiled during the combat, seeing his father master what had taken him a long time to learn. "You are beginning to understand," Luke shouted as their blades clashed in cascades of green and blue sparks. The most dangerous teaching came when Luke decided to show Anakin how to channel and control Force lightning. This ability was traditionally considered exclusively of the dark side, a pure manifestation of anger and hatred. Luke explained the mechanics behind the technique, how electricity was generated through the manipulation of the Force combined with intense emotion. He demonstrated, allowing blue lightning to dance between his fingers in a controlled manner. Anakin watched fascinated and terrified simultaneously. This was power beyond anything the Jedi Order openly taught. Luke then guided Anakin through the process, helping him find the necessary anger but keep it under absolute control. Anakin's first attempts resulted only in weak sparks, but his natural determination and powerful connection with the Force soon produced results. When he finally managed to generate sustained lightning, Anakin felt both triumph and fear of what he had just done. During the training, Anakin realized he had never faced an opponent as formidable as Luke. The young master combined traditional Jedi techniques with more aggressive and fluid movements, clearly influenced by his time studying with Palpatine. Luke was fast, unpredictable, and seemed to anticipate every move Anakin made before he made it. In their combats, Anakin was forced to go beyond his known limits, to access reserves of power and skill he didn't even know he possessed. Luke never let him be comfortable, always pressing, always challenging, always forcing growth. Through the pain and exhaustion of these intense trainings, Anakin developed not only new skills, but a deeper understanding of himself. He began to see his emotions not as weaknesses to be hidden, but as an integral part of who he was, tools that could be used constructively when properly understood. After several days in Osus, both simultaneously felt that Anakin's time there was coming to an end. The Force that had brought them together now signaled that separation was necessary. Luke placed a hand on Anakin's shoulder, his gaze carrying both pride and concern. "It is time for each of us to face Palpatine in our own time," Luke said with a serious voice. "You have the knowledge now. Use it wisely and don't let fear or anger control your actions." Anakin nodded, feeling deep gratitude for this mysterious master who had shown him so much. They embraced briefly, and Anakin felt an inexplicable connection with Luke, something that went beyond master and student. Luke instructed Anakin to enter deep meditation again, explaining that the Force would take him back to his own time. Anakin obeyed, closing his eyes and letting the Force envelop him once more. When he opened his eyes again, he was back in the meditation chamber in the Jedi Temple of Coruscant. As if he had never left, only a few minutes had passed in the present. Anakin rose from the meditation position, but he was a completely different man from the one who had sat there minutes ago in objective time. His body buzzed with renewed energy and crystalline purpose. There was no more doubt or confusion in his mind. He knew what he needed to do, and he knew he had the tools to do it. Without hesitation or fear, Anakin left the meditation chamber and marched through the temple corridors with determination that made other Jedi move out of his way. Some watched him with concern, sensing the change in his presence in the Force, something darker but not corrupt, like steel tempered in fire. Anakin didn't stop for explanations, going straight to Chancellor Palpatine's office. Visiting hours were over, but Anakin ignored the guards' protests. Using the Force to open the locked doors and enter the Sith's private sanctuary, Palpatine was sitting behind his desk, apparently reviewing documents, but Anakin knew now that it was all a facade. The Chancellor looked up with apparent surprise that quickly transformed into caution when he saw the expression on Anakin's face. "Anakin, my young friend, what is the meaning of this intrusion?" Palpatine asked, his voice still maintaining the gentle tone he used as a mask. But Anakin could see through it now, could feel the dark rot hidden beneath the benevolent grandfather facade. "I know who you are, Darth Sidious," Anakin declared, his hand resting on the lightsaber. "I know about your plans, about the empire you want to build on the ashes of the Republic." Palpatine remained motionless for a moment before his face transformed, the mask falling to reveal the calculating predator beneath. "The future, yes, I sense. So the Force showed you truths beyond the veil of time." "Interesting," Palpatine murmured, rising slowly. "But knowledge of the future will not change your destiny, young Skywalker." The combat began in an explosion of red and blue light when both activated their lightsabers simultaneously. Palpatine attacked with surprising speed for someone of his apparent age, his saber tracing deadly arcs in the air. Anakin defended and counterattacked, his movements flowing with the grace and power that Luke had taught him to access. The Chancellor's room was quickly destroyed as the two danced their mortal dance. Expensive furniture reduced to pieces, priceless works of art cut in half. Palpatine continually tried to speak, using words as weapons as much as his saber. "Join me, Anakin, and I can save Padme from death. It is your destiny to be at my side." But Anakin didn't waver this time. The words found no purchase in his heart because he understood the tactics now. "My destiny is to bring balance to the Force," Anakin responded, "and that means the end of the Sith." Their blades clashed in a stalemate that made the air around them tremble with released energy. The duel intensified as both unleashed more of their power, no longer constrained by pretenses or deceptions. Palpatine completely abandoned his mask, allowing his true Sith nature to shine through every movement and attack. He leaped and spun with impossible agility, his red saber leaving trails of light in the air. Anakin matched every attack, his connection with the Force amplified by the understanding Luke had given him. He could feel the patterns in Palpatine's attacks, the openings created by Sith arrogance. When Palpatine tried to use the Force to throw him against the wall, Anakin used the same technique simultaneously, the two forces canceling each other out in a shockwave that broke all the office windows. Glass rained down as the two circled each other, looking for advantage. Palpatine smiled with genuine satisfaction. "Finally you show your true potential, but potential without the will to do what's necessary is useless." In a coordinated movement, both used the Force to wrench the other's lightsaber away, the weapons flying across the room and falling out of reach. What had begun as a saber duel transformed into something more primordial and terrible. Palpatine extended his hands and blue rays of pure energy shot toward Anakin with murderous intent. Anakin raised his own hands, using what Luke had taught him to generate his own lightning, making the electrical currents collide in the air between them. The room filled with blinding blue light and the smell of burned ozone as the two channeled massive amounts of power through their bodies. Palpatine laughed as he intensified his attack, certain that the young Jedi could not sustain this level of energy expenditure. "You cannot defeat me, Skywalker. I am the dark side," the Sith shouted over the roar of energy. But Anakin was not fighting alone. He carried with him Luke's teachings, Yoda's wisdom, Padme's love, and the iron determination that always defined who he was. He began to advance slowly, step by step, pushing against Palpatine's storm of lightning. His boots burned marks on the floor as he forced his way forward through pure willpower and connection with the Force. Palpatine began to retreat, surprise and then fear flashing in his yellow eyes for the first time in decades. "Impossible," the Sith gasped, intensifying his attack until the very lightning began to crackle against the surrounding walls. But Anakin continued advancing, his lightning now overpowering Palpatine's, pushing them back toward the Sith himself. With a final cry of effort, Anakin concentrated all his energy in a single devastating explosion that broke through Palpatine's defenses and hit him with full force, throwing the Sith's body across the room where he hit the wall and slid to the floor, smoking and broken, finally defeated. Anakin stood there for a long moment, panting, his body trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline discharge. Slowly, the reality of what he had just done began to settle in. He had killed the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, even though the Chancellor was secretly a Sith Lord. Other Jedi began to arrive, alerted by the massive disturbance in the Force and the sounds of battle. Master Windu led the group, his saber already activated until he saw the scene before him. Anakin explained everything about his vision through the Force, his encounter with the mysterious Jedi Master, decades in the future, the revelations about Palpatine and the empire he planned to create. The Jedi Council took him to the temple where he provided a complete account before all the masters. Yoda, Obi-Wan, Windu, Plo Koon, and Ki-Adi-Mundi listened in silence while Anakin described his impossible journey through time and the teachings he had received. "Brought balance to the Force, you did," Yoda finally declared, his eyes shining with ancient wisdom. "Fulfilled, the prophecy is." The Jedi Council, after long deliberations and consultations with the Force, made an unprecedented decision. Anakin Skywalker was promoted to Jedi Master and received a seat on the Council, recognition that he had truly fulfilled his destiny as the Chosen One. In the following months, the Republic went through tremendous upheaval as the truth about Palpatine came to light and his conspiracies were dismantled. Anakin remained at Padme's side through everything, and when the time came for her to give birth, he was there holding her hand. The twins were born healthy and perfect, and it was Padme who named the boy. "Luke," she said softly, looking at the baby in her arms. "This will be Luke Skywalker." Anakin looked at his son, and in a moment of blinding clarity, finally understood the truth. The Jedi who had taught him about the dark side, who had shown him how to defeat Palpatine, who had changed the course of history, was this little baby destined to grow up and save his own father. When Padme handed him the boy to hold, Anakin looked into his son's eyes and whispered a silent promise. That he would be the father Luke deserved, that he would protect his children and the galaxy, and that he would honor the sacrifice his son would still make in the future by traveling through time to save him from the darkness.